Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan says the Organization of Islamic Cooperation must raise its voice over the violations of human rights in occupied Kashmir. Addressing a press conference in Multan, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said OIC should also speak out about anti-Muslim law in India. Qureshi said Pakistan is aware of its responsibilities and Indian designs will be unveiled before the global community. He said India is engaging in continuous ceasefire violations along the line of control, and the fencing on the LOC has also been cut at 5 places. The foreign minister said India itself is divided over the newly enacted citizenship law and it would be struck down by Indian courts. He said 25 people have been killed and hundreds have been arrested since protests against the law erupted on 11th of December. In Afghanistan, 17 pro-government fighters have been killed in a Taliban attack in the northern Takhar province. Provincial officials said 4 others were wounded in the attack on the forces' base in the Khaja Bahauddin district. Officials said additional forces were dispatched after the attack and the Taliban were driven back. They said the forces were led by Malik Ahmad Tatar, a feared commander locally known as a ruthless enemy of the Taliban. Claiming the responsibility, the Taliban said 21 soldiers, including a commander, were killed in the attack. Meanwhile, Kabul says it will disclose a list of negotiators for intra-Afghan talks after the US and Taliban sign a peace deal. The talks between Taliban and Washington are on hold since the 11th December attack on Bagram Air Base. A statement from the Afghan presidential palace said the delegation will represent the government of Afghanistan. Deputy spokesperson Durrani Javed Waziri said Kabul will only hold a dialogue if the Taliban show they are ready to talk with the Afghan people. In Yemen, 9 people have been killed and several others injured in a blast on a military parade in southern Al-Dhalia town. In a statement on Twitter, the southern forces controlling Al-Dhalia accused Houthi rebels of firing a missile. They said 3 members of the Houthi militia have been arrested near the bombing site. There is no comment yet from the rebels who control the northern part of the town. Earlier this week, 17 people were killed in shelling at a busy market in Sada region controlled by Houthis. Houthis attributed the shelling to the Saudi-led coalition and pledged the victims would be avenged. Moving on to Iran, which has accused France of interference in the case of an Iranian-French academic detained in the Islamic Republic. In a statement, the foreign ministry said Fariba Adil Khan is an Iranian national and faces security-related charges. Spokesperson Abbas Mousavi said the French foreign ministry's request has no legal basis. Earlier, Paris summoned the Iranian envoy over the detention of Adil Khan and another academic, Roland Marshall. Paris demanded their immediate release. Meanwhile, Tehran said an Australian academic, Kelly Moore Gilbert, who was jailed for espionage, must serve her sentence. Moreover, Iran has summoned Kuwait's envoy in Tehran to protest the hosting of an anti-Iranian meeting by its officials. In a statement, Iran's foreign ministry accused Kuwaiti officials of meeting the representative of a terrorist group. The statement didn't name the alleged group. It said these kinds of actions are clear interference in Tehran's internal affairs. Iran and Kuwait have had relatively good relations in recent years, despite tensions between Tehran and other Gulf Arab states. In Iraq, protesters have broken into the Nasiriyah oil field and forced employees in the control room to cut off the field's power supply. Security officials said the oil field is offline until further notice. The protesters hailed President Barham Salih's rejection of Assad al-Idani's nomination for Prime Minister. The Nasiriyah oil field produces 90,000 barrels of oil per day. This is the first time protesters have shut down an entire oil field since demonstrations began on 1st of October. Iraq's economy depends on oil exports, which make up over 90% of its revenue. Turkey says it will not vacate its 12 observation posts in Syria's rebel-held province of Idlib. Defense Minister Hulusi Akar said Turkey respects the Sochi agreement reached with Russia and expects Moscow to abide by it. He said Ankara will carry out its mission of ensuring the ceasefire stays in place. Akar said Turkish troops at these points have been ordered to respond without hesitation if attacked. He said innocent Syrians have suffered a lot already and the regime shouldn't be allowed to make them suffer anymore. Regarding the deployment in Libya, he said the army is ready to protect Turkish interests whether at home or abroad. In Istanbul, hundreds of demonstrators have gathered near the Russian consulate to protest against the ongoing attacks on Idlib. The demonstrators, mostly Syrians living in Turkey, chanted slogans against Russia for attacks on civilian targets in the rebel-held Idlib. Demonstrators said they wanted to highlight the Syrian government's violence against the civilians and the humanitarian situation unfolding in the province. Protesters, including women and their children, held pictures of victims and banners lamenting world silence on the issue. Meanwhile, the UN says over 230,000 people have been displaced in Syria amid intensified attacks. Meanwhile, Turkey has warned against attempts to create a Syria-like crisis in Libya. Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu said if Libya becomes like Syria, other countries in the region will also suffer. He said every effort should be made to prevent Libya from being divided and sliding into chaos. Çavuşoğlu said Ankara only deals with legitimate governments. He stressed that the military and the security deal signed with Tripoli is important. Meanwhile, Libya's national oil company faced closure amid clashes close to the country's largest refinery in the western Zavia port. In Ukraine, the government forces and the pro-Russian separatists have started an all-for-all prisoner swap at the checkpoint of Murmansk. The presidential office said all remaining prisoners of the 5-year conflict will return home. A representative of the self-declared Donetsk People's Republic, Daria Morozova, said they will get back 87 separatists and hand over 55 fighters to Kiev. The exchange comes after Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky had their first face-to-face talks in Paris in December. The leaders agreed on some measures to de-escalate Europe's only active war. More than 13,000 people have been killed since Moscow-backed separatists launched a bid for independence in 2014 in eastern Ukraine. Guinea-Bissau is voting today in the runoff presidential election, pitting two former prime ministers against each other. Incumbent President Jose Maria Vaz failed to make it to the second round after a turbulent 5-year term. Both the candidates have promised to overcome a long-running political impasse and modernize the West African nation. The ruling party's Domingo Simões Pereira won the first round on November 24th with 43% of the votes. Former Premier Omaro Ibalo secured 28% votes amid a tight runoff race. Bissau struggles with poverty and political instability, suffering 9 coups since its independence in 1974. In Egypt, 28 people have been killed in 2 separate road crashes, one in Port Said city and the other east of Cairo. Security officials said 24 others were injured, several of them tourists, and some are in critical condition. In Port Said, a minibus carrying garment factory workers collided with a truck, killing 22. The accident came only hours after 2 buses carrying tourists collided with a truck near Cairo. Health officials said 2 Malaysian women and an Indian man were among those killed, along with 3 Egyptians. In central Mexico, 6 people have been killed and 5 others wounded in a shootout. Authorities said the attack took place in the Uriangato, a city in the state of Guanajuato. In a statement, the mayor's office said police initially found 5 dead bodies. One of those wounded died after being brought to a nearby clinic. The office said it asked the state authorities to ramp up security with 60 members of the public security forces. Police also recovered a discarded firearm and several bullet casings from the crime scene. Mexico's government says Guanajuato has recorded over 3,000 deaths between January and November. Moving on to the U.S., where 2 people have been killed and 7 others were injured during a drive-by shooting at a music video set in Houston. Police said people were in the parking lot of an office complex filming a rap video when they were ambushed by shooters. It said 2 people were pronounced dead at the scene and the injured were sent to hospital. An investigation into the incident is underway. Meanwhile, an attacker stabbed 5 people at a rabbi's home in the state of New York. A Jewish council said 2 of the victims are critical, with one of them stabbed at least 6 times. Authorities say people were stabbed during a Hanukkah celebration late Saturday night. Police said the suspect is in custody and an investigation is underway. The rampage follows days of increased tensions over anti-Semitic assaults. Moreover, the U.S. suffered more mass killings in 2019 than any other year on record. A database compiled with the Associated Press, USA Today, and Northeastern University recorded 41 incidents and 211 deaths. The findings reveal that there were more mass killings in the current year than any year going back to at least the 70s. Researchers said of all the cases, this year 33 involved firearms. The deadliest in the 2019 were the killings of 12 people on Virginia Beach in May and 22 in El Paso in August. Welcome back. 50 people have died in Bangladesh in the last 2 months as a cold wave continues to sweep across the country. The country's lowest temperature this year was recorded at 4.5 degrees Celsius yesterday. Health officials said 17 people died of acute respiratory infection and 33 from diarrhea and other diseases. They said hospitals have been crowded with people suffering from influenza, dehydration, and pneumonia. Bangladesh Met Office said the cold snap with chilly winds and dense fog is likely to continue for a few more days. In the Philippines, the death toll from Typhoon Phamphan has risen to 41, while 12 people remain missing. The storm left the Philippines on Saturday after ransacking central Visayas as officials continue to assess the damage. Rescue officials said the typhoon has affected over 1.5 million people as tens of thousands are still in temporary shelters. Officials said over 260,000 homes were damaged by 200 kilometers per hour winds. The government estimates the damage to agriculture and infrastructure to be worth $21 million. It is the year's 7th typhoon to hit the Southeast Asian country. In Japan, police have found the remains of at least 5 people in a wooden boat that washed up on the coast of the country's Sado Islands. A Coast Guard official said police have found 2 human heads. Chinnen said the remains of the bodies are partially skeletonized. Chinnen said the boat is suspected to be from North Korea as the sides are painted with the Korean numbers and letters. In Fiji, 2 people were killed as Cyclone Sarai battered the South Pacific nation with strong wind and heavy rain. Authorities said over 2,500 people have been moved to 70 evacuation centers. The Category 2 tropical cyclone is not expected to make landfall in Fiji, but the Weather Service has issued storm and flood warnings for the parts of the country. The Met Service said the cyclone is expected to have average winds of up to 110 km per hour with momentary gusts to 150 km per hour. Thousands of families have been affected by flooding from heavy rains in western Kenya. Government officials said the town of Kisumu was flooded by torrents that began on Christmas Eve. Authorities said over 6,000 families faced displacement. They have lost most of their belongings. Locals said that they have no dry place to sleep and fear the flooding could worsen. Government agencies have urged residents to move as soon as possible to a rescue center set up at a local secondary school. The Australian government says it will compensate volunteer firefighters in New South Wales amid increasing political pressure. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said payments of up to $6,000 Australian dollars would be available for eligible firefighters. He said volunteers who spent over 10 days in the field this fire season will be eligible for the compensation. Bushfires have razed over 1 million hectares in 5 states since September and left 8 people dead.
Commonwealth will be doing, together with the states who will administer the payments, is to be providing payments for income lost by firefighters, rural fire service volunteers here in New South Wales. That will be paid with a maximum of up to $6,000 per individual.
NASA has revealed its latest Mars rover designed to seek out signs of life on the red planet. It will be used in the first of the 2-part mission in July 2020, collecting samples to analyze them back on Earth. More on this report.
The rover, which remains unnamed for now, was shown to the media under strict guidelines. Members of the press weren't allowed to wear makeup or perfume and had to wear the same white suits worn by NASA engineers.
So what we do in this room is we make sure we have a strict clean room protocol so that we are not contaminating our vehicles, so that we can preserve the science that we are interested in learning about.
The rover will be sent to Mars' Jezero crater, which scientists believe was once a great lake. Here, the rover will pull samples from the ground, which will eventually be brought back to Earth in the mission's second phase.
We're carrying about 40 tubes on the vehicle. We're going to collect 20 to 30 probably for return. Once we have a sufficient set, we'll put them down on the ground. And another mission, which we hope to launch in 2026, will come, land on the surface, collect those samples, and put them into a rocket, basically.
The rover will eventually be named in early 2020. NASA's previous 4 Mars rovers were named Sojourner, Spirit, Opportunity, and Curiosity. In India, violent anti-government protests against the country's new citizenship law have had a major impact on the tourism industry. Officials said about 200,000 tourists cancelled or postponed their trip to the Taj Mahal in the past 2 weeks. The officials at the Taj Mahal said there has been a 60% decline in visitor footfalls this December. They said despite the assurance of security, most local and international tourists have decided to stay away. Meanwhile, managers at luxury hotels around the Taj Mahal said last-minute cancellations have further dampened business. The Agra Tourism Development Foundation said the government's internet suspension has also taken a heavy toll on the industry. On the other hand, the British Backpackers Society has declared Pakistan the world's 3rd highest potential adventure destination for 2020. The society made the announcement after counting votes from adventure travel experts from around the world. In a post, the society called Pakistan a travel gem with otherworldly beauty, with unforgettable road trips and hospitality at its core. It said besides offering a stunning landscape in the north, the country offers rich culture, tradition and history in bulk. The society said with the new e-visa system and reforms, the Pakistani government has put tourism at the front and the center of its policy. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.